And these guys have always been more or less okay. Well, we can do deals with the regime. We're making money. They're not making money anymore. They kicked off this one.
Anti-government protests have continued for a 13th day in Iran. Thousands demonstrating in over 100 cities across the country, including the capital of Tehran. People have not just taken to the streets to protest against the country's crumbling economy, but also the Ayatollah himself, who's promised to crack down harder than ever on demonstrators. Well, joining me now is Tim Marshall, former foreign correspondent and author of Prisoners of Geography. Good afternoon, Tim.
Hello.
Tell us what you think. When you look at these protests, you've had many years of watching these kind of crises in Iran. 13th day, who has the upper hand? Is it the protesters or is it the regime?
I think it's in the balance, which it hasn't been before. I was there in one of the previous uprisings. I still have the scars on my legs to prove it from the Tehran police. But it doesn't mean that this is it. It might be. I mean, I'm not often in agreement with the United States president, but as he said, could be.
Yeah, and when I heard that, I thought, yeah, but it won't be, will it? Because so many times you've seen these huge protests, you've then seen, a huge loss of life, and the regime takes back control. I mean, that would be the sort of playbook, wouldn't it?
It would, but there is a difference. I'll try and lay it out, but basically there's three scenarios. But the reason I think there's a difference this time, I'll come on to. The three scenarios are the regime cracks down absolutely brutally. They have yet to really unleash their firepower. And as far as we know, they're the only ones with the guns. And then we just wait until the next time. And eventually there is going to be change. That's without question. The Ayatollah is 86. Scenario two, they do it this time. They take over. Maybe the Crown Prince comes back, maybe he doesn't, and democracy breaks out. I think that's the least likely scenario. Scenario three, they have a saying in Tehran, we swapped the crown for the turban, the Shah for the
Ayatollah.
For the Ayatollahs. And they worry that we will now swap the turban for the boots, for the army. So given that the army would probably want to try to keep some sort of order, and if we have time, Kathy, we could come on to the split between the Revolutionary Guard and the traditional army. But the last bit I would say is that the reason I think it's different this time is that the economic situation is different this time. Inflation 50%, power cuts, there's been a drought, and crucially, and this is the real bit, the Bazaris kick this one off. The Bazaris are the big traders in the Grand Bazaar in the center of Tehran. They are the guys who actually chartered Ayatollah Khamenei's plane out of Paris to get him back during the revolution of 79. And these guys have always been more or less okay. Well, we can do deals with the regime. We're making money. They're not making money anymore. They kicked off this one, and so that's why I think it's different. But I will go back to that phrase. Could be.
Yeah, and let's see how it pans out, and let's hope that there isn't terrible bloodshed. But it does. There have already dozens have lost their lives, so it doesn't look hopeful, does it? But where does Trump fit into that picture? I mean, he promised to come to the aid of protesters if the Ayatollah didn't back off, basically. Is that something that could be thrown into the mix? As even suggestions, speculation, heavy speculation, that he could in some way force the Ayatollah's exit in the way he's obviously done with Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela? What's your take on that?
I think that's a much bigger nut to crack, and I think they would probably rather wait, because actually Venezuela is connected. It's absolutely riddled with Hezbollah, which is the Iranian proxy militia. The Iranians are all over Venezuela, but of course now they may not be if Trump gets his way in Venezuela. Locked and loaded is what he said. You can't rule it out because you can never rule anything out with this guy, but sending in the cruise missiles is not going to stop the regime slaughtering the people.
Well, but might it prompt the Ayatollah into exile? As clearly Trump's talking that up, isn't he?
Yes, but it's not just. It might do. He's 86. He's really not very well. It is thought he's had 36 years in power. Does he really want to end up in Moscow?
Isn't it?
Yes, it's thought to be. Is it going to end up in Moscow? Yes, of course he might, but of course at times like this, people are busy putting it around. People that want change, and I don't blame them, but they're busy putting it around. Oh, he's fleeing. They're putting it around that various officials are trying to get, visas for Paris. Of course they are, because that's what you do at revolutionary times. You sow this doubt. But at the moment, they are still holding. There is the Basij militia, tens of thousands of them, possibly hundreds of thousands, who do support the regime. There's 160,000 Revolutionary Guards whose name is on, the tin. That's what they do. They guard the revolution. The Artesh, the army, we don't know. There's about 600,000 of them. They are in sort of competition with the Revolutionary Guard for who's top dog. They don't like each other. So all these things are in play, and it's bigger than it's ever been before. It's probably more violent, apart on the opposition side. They have yet to unleash the Revolutionary Guard and the Basij in full numbers. So I really think it is in play. And another thing I thought was interesting, sorry, just briefly go back to Trump. When he was asked yesterday, I think, about whether the Shah, the Crown Prince, should return, and he did not really say he thought that was a good idea, because I think they are watching and waiting. But it is different.
Well, it's very, there are parallels with Venezuela, aren't there, with the opposition leader
exactly,
there,
who,
people thought Trump would be up for, and he hasn't been. But just listening to you talk there about those three strands, the militia, the Revolutionary Guard and the army, is it, of course, we don't know. The regime may crack down brutally and it will be back to status quo ante, but if not, is there a reasonable chance that one of those three groups ends up having the upper hand and effectively wielding some kind of control?
I think that's a reasonable scenario, yes. The thing about the guards is, and changing the turban for those boots, is that the guards, the senior echelons of the guards, they've actually got all sorts of business companies. Katam al-Anbiya is one of their companies, and the Revolutionary Guard built part of the Tehran metro. Now, that's just crazy, isn't it? It's like the Royal Marines building part of our tube and making profits out of it. But that's, they're gangsters. And if the Ayatollahs go down, the Revolutionary Guards might go down with them and lose their money. Not only that, they have killed, murdered tens of thousands of Iranians. And the Iranian people are not going to forget this. So they can't just say, well, I tell you what, we'll go home, because people will come after them. And so I think they would fight, which brings me finally to the army. They are made up, of course, of ordinary Iranians. And the Artesh has resented the fact that the IGRC is sort of like the elite. And they are the ones with heavy weapons and the tanks, although the Revolutionary Guards have some form of that. So I'm not saying it's going to come down to that, but I just think that this idea that it is inevitable that the demonstrators win and peace and democracy breaks out is only one of several scenarios. There is the regime crackdown that succeeds temporarily, and then there is the some sort of authoritarian rule, but that at least would, I think, put them on a new course.
Right.
It's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen now.
I mean, it's fascinating. Looking back at this week, that famous quote, there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen. It feels like one of those weeks, doesn't it?
These are monumental. I'll try and be brief. Venezuela and Iran are absolutely connected, partially for the reasons I said before, but this is also partially about the Americans seeking to get their way and change things all over the place. It's not just about oil, it's about minerals, it's about rare earth materials, it's about spheres of influence, and it is in motion.
Indeed. Tim Marshall, thanks very much for coming on the programme. Former foreign correspondent, author of Prisoners of Geography there. It feels like pretty seismic times, as we were just reflecting there.